He could even get your owl out of that cage.
Welcome back, everybody. Today we're discussing Watchmen, Season 1, Episode 3, She Was Killed by Space Junk. Before we get started, I just want to give a big shout out to everyone that recently subscribed. We just broke 30,000 subscribers, and that was the goal that we had for this entire season. So yeah, I mean, I guess with that in mind, we'll move the goal back to 35,000, and thank you. Honestly, guys, thank you so very much for that. The episode begins, continues, and ends with a joke. The joke known as the brick joke, and we hear it delivered by Agent Laurie Blake. But some of you may know her better as the Silk Spectre. Silk Spectre was one of the original Watchmen that dated Dr. Manhattan before he became a god, and based on her good vibrations, I think that she still thinks of him fondly, though he has moved on. The episode begins when she enters an interplanetary phone booth with the intention to communicate with Dr. Manhattan, leaving him a message in vain. From the diagram, we know that the message travels from the northern hemisphere of Earth to what looks like the North Pole of Mars, which may be exactly where he is, or just the receiving antenna. If they start showing other geographical locations, then this will be important information. The automated system makes me believe that this is a booth that allows anyone to call Dr. Manhattan and voice their concerns, or ideas, or prayers. It sounds like rampant capitalism, in all honesty, because, well, rampant capitalism and false hope, because we know that Dr. Manhattan doesn't need to hear. He likely doesn't care. He's just indifferent to humanity altogether. I'd be willing to bet that these machines have never worked, and they were deployed all over the world to give people false hope that a god actually existed for them, but at a cost. Because if you look at the bottom, you can see the price of $5 for 3 minutes. Seems like a good way to rake in money with, little to no cost and no way to verify their claims, meaning that we should not trust the true company. Oddly enough, this true company is the company that purchased Adrian Veidt's company after he vanished. Part of me wants to connect these two entities as secret, malicious agents still in power, still in cahoots in some kind of way, but we really don't have much to go on right now. Immoral choices like charging people to talk to a god that doesn't care to listen seem like a big red flag that they're an evil corporation not working with humanity's best interests in mind. But we'll move on for now. Agent Blake enters a bank and finishes the first part of the joke, a finished grill with a single brick left behind and a little girl throwing the brick high into the air. You see, the brick joke is actually two jokes, and it's not really much of a joke at all. Hold on. I'm explaining too much. We'll come back to that. We find out that the bank robbery was a setup by the FBI, and they catch Discount Batman. We learn from these scenes that Laurie has come a long way since her days as a vigilante herself. The sex symbol crusader now condemns the practice, and she works for the government to stop unauthorized vigilantes from practicing. I say unauthorized because I believe that the Keene Act of 1977 was put in place, which outlaws the practice unless you are authorized by the government. I don't know if that extends to local government or solely federal. That may become important later as they decide who is a vigilante, who can they go after, so on and so forth. It also lends some explanation later when she asks Angela the difference between a masked cop and a vigilante. She shoots the dollar store Batman in the back as he flees, to the shock of everyone around her. She is ruthless and not concerned for his life at all because he's breaking the law, preventing him from helping other people. The agents around her, their reaction is the first hint that, hey, maybe people don't really want these people gone, followed by us seeing the crowd of sour shouting and disgruntled slurs. People don't mind these vigilantes, or American heroes as they probably see it now, but the law is the law, and she uses it to openly shoot fleeing perpetrators in the back. It really speaks to her character and how far she's come, or, fallen, when you think that she was once this vigilante protecting people, and now she's shooting them in the back. Next, we come to her at home, a single black glove in the miscellaneous drawer. She feeds a mouse to her pet owl. The owl is a reminder of her friend, Night Owl, who currently is in federal custody. At one point, they were both arrested for violating the Keene Act, and she chose to work with the government instead of go to jail. She pulls out her big blue balls and opens a briefcase with the code 667. I'm only noting this because it may be important, possibly pushing that she's one tick away away from 666, the number of the beast, so to speak. Someone knocks on the door. We meet Senator Keene. This creepy fuck, man. I swear something is up with this dude. His daddy was the one that put this anti-vigilante law in order, and finally he tells her of an operation that he's requested from the FBI, investigating the murder of Judd. He somehow knows that it wasn't cavalry and believes that it was a vigilante that did this. But Lori isn't one to just take orders as she seems fit, and calls out that his name rides on the success of this mask program, and cops dying while it's in place means that his plan is failing. And in proxy, he likely won't be able to be president if it fails. And he replies with the greatest subtext of all time. The president can pardon anybody, even your owl that's locked away in a cage. He's referring to Night Owl, not her pet owl, which confirms that he's still in prison in this story. So she takes the job wanting to set her friend free. And pretty much that. I mean, the scene transitions after this point. I think that her whole goal is strictly to get her friend out of prison at this point, which speaks to their relationship. The scene changes, and we come to the joke about dead heroes at the pearly gates. While it may seem like the joke is unrelated to the first part, it's actually part of the brick joke formula, discussing things unrelated, like how her friends, the Watchmen, stand before God and present their deeds, given divine gifts that shape them, meant for the betterment of the world, but what did they really do with those gifts? We come to the FBI meeting and learn that the bill that put Redfordations in place was called the Victims' Racial Violence Act, confirming that it's isolated to this area and has caused a surge of Black Americans to come to the area to claim those benefits. We also learned that the 7th Kavalry started because of this, but like the director states, it's just the Klan with different masks. The reason the White Night happened and why the cavalry hates the police is because the police started abusing their power, rounding up all possible people with connections to the Klan, which meant the majority of white people were targeted in this area. And the police seized everything they could, even grandfathered weapons, which, given the context of him stating this, I take as the police not acting accordingly, which isn't too far-fetched based on what we've seen police do so far. We see some slides about Judd and Angela. Nothing really stands out to me about Judd's, aside from the note of him being a family friend of Keene. Again, a part of me thinks that the Klan runs deep in their blood, and that's how they all know each other so well. I'm not sure why this is important information for this document, but it's got to be important information for us, otherwise we wouldn't be seeing it, even subtly as it is now. But when you look at Angela's, it shows her vigilante name, meaning the department in charge of tracking these people down know that that's her status, know that she is Sister Night, and that's how Lori knows when she confronts her later. But this also means that she must be protected under the Keene law since she's working for the police, and kind of takes away from the intensity of the situation later when Lori reveals that she knows that she's a vigilante. It's odd. It also indirectly tells us how Senator Keene knew this information, because he was able to call in favors and move people around as he wishes for this operation, meaning that the FBI is very much in his pocket. Lori sets off alone with Petey, and we see the Millenium Clock. It was built by True Industries, and like all evil things in Watchmen, relates to an ever-ticking doomsday clock and a giant foreboding shadow cast from it. I can't wait to see what happens when this clock strikes midnight. 100% this will be the finale or something of the sorts. From afar, it looks gyroscopic in nature and probably signals the end of the world or something. We're also told a single name, Lady True, founder of True Industries and probably the supervillain of this in some kind of way. I also immediately noticed when looking at these words that True and Veidt are like uncomfortably close to each other in spelling. This may come to be evidence of them working together, but right now, it's just an oddity that I wanted to point out. We also learned that Petey has a PhD in history, nerd, and likely operates the website that HBO launched as a companion piece to this show. It's ARG, similar to Westworld's websites, and has a ton of information to look through. Link is in the description below if you're interested in that. Lori arrives in Oklahoma and sees the wheelchair marks from Will. She goes to Judd's house, and then we get this awesome shot of her symbolically wearing a mask still. She meets Jane, then drops by a police black site being used to interrogate and likely torture these people en masse. It's fucked up. I mean, I'm kind of shocked that the showrunners decided to isolate this only to Tulsa, however, because it kind of makes it even more heinous, makes it appear like the police are unruly criminals and the other parts of the country don't act like this. And if that's the case, which I believe it is, perhaps they're building to the 7th Kavalry not being 100% bad guys after all. Right now, I do agree that there is a vast conspiracy at play, and we're being spoon-fed information about it. I mean, how many other times will we see morally bankrupt police enforcement before we go, maybe these are the bad guys and the cavalry are justified in some kind of way? Holy moly, what if when the cavalry say that the people are race traitors, they aren't talking about black and white races, but human races, supporting the Humanity 2.0 or multiple Earth theory that I brought up in episode 1. I'm not going to stress this one way or another just yet, because posters like this do align to them just being the Klan 2.0, but I don't know. I feel some really morally gray stuff incoming, is all I'll say. She is there to meet Looking Glass, and like Angela, his name is known by the FBI. The pod is a racist detector. Lori is suspicious that an autopsy wasn't done on Judd and sets her focuses on Angela. We arrive at the funeral taking place at Tartarus Acres, which I believe is how you say that. This, according to Greek mythology, is a deep abyss used as a dungeon for tormenting the wicked and as a prison for titans. Plato also writes that it is a place for souls to be judged after death and divine punishments given. Angela speaks a few words about Judd and starts singing a song that he requested she sing. The tick-tocking begins and we see a single cavalry member crawling through the ground. The song she sings is the last roundup and again relates Judd to horses in some kind of way. The bomber emerges and demands Senator Keene, which again leads to their purpose not being as black and white as it seems. They aren't here strictly for carnage. They are making some kind of big move. Lori takes the shot, and he wasn't bluffing. A dead man switch was in play, and Angela saves the day by dropping Judd's casket on top of the bomb. It's pretty gruesome, and honestly, God, so well done. As soon as I saw him go down, the clicking start, Angela standing there, the body, everything, I was like, wow, they're gonna do it. And sure enough, they did. And yeah, I mean, it was perfect. We next come to Adrian Veidt, and it starts with a record to symbolize the cyclical nature of his life now. The scene slowly crawls across the room, a crowded room, another instance of multiple spherical objects or globes in the same room, only this time, the globe is worn down, it's black or blue. We also see a small gyroscope, which could be linking him to the Millenium Clock, because we know this is taking place before we ever saw the Millenium Clock. This could be him, maybe even planning its design. That same idea applies to the magnifying glass on the squid. We also see plans for a catapult and a montage of him building a suit. He sends a countless number of Mr. Phillips into space with said catapult. Like everyone would expect, Mr. Phillips dies. I'm not sure what's happening here, because Adrian Veidt is the smartest man in human history, or at least he believes that he is. Did he not calculate for temperature in this experiment? Nevertheless, he ventures for thicker skin and gets stopped by the game warden. I believe that the game warden that stops him is another Mr. Phillips, but I can't quite be sure yet. It's really far away. He gets home, we see a 3rd-year anniversary, and he gets a letter. The seal on the letter is the same as the symbol on the flag that he passes when going to kill this buffalo. It's an interesting symbol for the game warden. It doesn't exactly speak, warming or protector. We learn that Veidt is in some form of captivity, and I say some form because part of me believes that this could be self-inflicted isolation. The game warden is charged with keeping him here, which means that Veidt is the game, similar to the buffalo. The game warden calls himself his humble servant, and people are really questioning who this person is based on this line. But I think that he's a servant to Veidt in the same fashion that he is a servant to the buffalo, so it could be taken either way here. The warden does stress that if he keeps trying to escape, he will suffer the consequences, and again, part of me thinks that this may be a product of boredom. Like, he has no purpose here, so he creates an adversary to combat him, even wearing a mask to remind him of a former self. Using advanced weaponry to have an advantage because Veidt thinks himself so highly, he could be the underdog and still win. It's a really odd dynamic here. Something about it just does not sit well with me. Take it as you will, however. I think right now it could be anything from a simulation prison to his Mars vacation home to think of the next way to quote-unquote save humanity. He has a letter typed and refers to the warden as a devious cur, which in Sumerian means grounds or mountains, often relating to an underworld. It's an odd word choice, and I may be reading too far into this, but I think in the context, it kind of means a devious border, like the game warden surrounds him, so it's the ground that he cannot travel, a devious cur. He mocks the game warden's letter and claims that his actions are purely recreational. Also, that he would never offend the terms of his own captivity. He agreed to them, which is another supporting factor of this being self-inflicted captivity. He doesn't pay attention to the game warden's threat and claims that he will hunt again at midnight, and puts on his Ozymandias suit with the lightning storm conquering outside, making it unable for him to go hunting at this time. We come back to Keen receiving praise, and we learn that Russia is building an intrinsic field generator. This was the machine that inadvertently created Dr. Manhattan, so the Russians having this means that they could be trying to create a giant red-penised man to combat our blue-penised man. Angela and Agent Blake have their pissing contest, and man, it was intense. She mocks the work that they've done, she challenges Angela's investigation, and even accuses her of stealing something from Judd's closet. Rightfully so, of course, but yeah, I legitimately had no clue how she was going to respond that didn't feel out of character. But I mean, this was perfect. This was so good. Two powerful women face to face at odds with each other, but something really tells me that they will team up before everything is said and done. And equally, I am excited to see that, as I am excited to see the pinnacle of their frustration with each other come to a point. She returns to the hotel and finishes the joke. Her being the non-hero in this story, the little girl who stands before God but behind the shadows of greater men. The little girl is the same little girl that threw the brick into the air, and finally the brick falls, killing God. That's the joke. Another way you could apply this is by lifting a car into the air one episode ago, playing an entirely different storyline this episode, and ending with the car falling at the end of it, which is exactly what happened. And her starting to laugh is how you finish the joke. She decides against the giant blue dong of Dr. Manhattan and sleeps with Petey, and finishes the call with Dr. Manhattan. The tiny glow from the sky could either be the ship that stole Angela's car in episode 2, or it could be Dr. Manhattan's doing, showing that he's still listening, that he's still involved in some kind of way. I mean, it doesn't kill her, and it makes her laugh. So this could be an endearing thing and not Will's mystery group trying to kill this person. But I don't know. I'll leave it up to you, and I look forward to your comments on exactly that. But with that, we come to the end of this video. If I left anything out, please be sure to comment below so other people can see. If you liked this content, please consider joining the Patreon or hang out with me on Twitter. Big shout out to the highest donors this month, Chris Cole, Robert Holtz, and Michael Link. You three have Manhattan-sized dongs, and I appreciate you guys greatly. All of you, greatly. Also, wow, we actually hit 30K subs after the second video, which again, that was my mark for this entire season. I'm so grateful for that. Much love, everybody, and I can't wait to talk to you all again soon.